Yeah, let's do it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and we are coming at you at exactly 11 a.m. Mountain Time. I think we only missed it by about 30 seconds, which is pretty good for me. Usually it could be hours. So thank you all for joining us live today. Obviously, it's been busy of couple of weeks, and today we're here to listen to what you all have to say, answer any questions that you may have, and I'll try to answer as many questions as possible about pretty much anything, whether it's about criminal procedure, cases that we've talked about, just anything that you have a general question about. Sometimes on the live chat, things go by rather quickly, but I'll do my best to make sure that I try to get those answered, all right? Now, first of all, would like to thank everyone who has subscribed to Crime Talk. Obviously, we've had some very good growth, and that would not be possible without you. We obviously are doing our best to put out quality content for you all just about every day. And usually if we don't get it out every day, it's my fault. Usually schedules just don't permit it, and we're trying to resolve that situation. Please like the channel. Please subscribe. Tell a friend. I've got a number in my head where I'd like to be, and just not for any particular reason, but just mentally I would like to get there. So we're getting close, but obviously we're trying to build this every day. I think trying to provide information and content that people appreciate, that they value, and hopefully it's a little more in-depth analysis and discussion. And we talked about this past week, where we can sometimes agree to disagree. I'm not always right. If I make a mistake, hey, I'll tell you, I got it wrong. The biggest thing is obviously just, everyone needs to keep it civil. It's always odd to me that, if you start resorting to just calling people names, that really shows your argument that it's lacking. All right. If you can't articulate what's going on, then that's well. Hey, Pascal gave a super chat there. How are you? Things are going well. Hope things are going well for you as well. So anyway, so that's it. So please please subscribe. Oh, and most importantly, we mentioned last week, if you go to scottreisch.com and sign up for our newsletter, last week, the first 10 people that signed up, we're going to get a mug sent to them. And those should be going out, if they haven't not already, the Crime Talk, official Crime Talk mug. All right. And we'll send you a newsletter, email, probably once a week, depends on kind of the information that comes in, of cases going on around the country, maybe some analysis by me as well. But guess what? It's free. I'm not going to bombard you with emails, not going to try to sell you anything, not going to do anything like that, sell your email address. Thank you, Sunshine, for a $20 super chat. Appreciate that. That's very appreciated. But it does get highlighted when you do those super chats. So thanks. It's a lot easier to see as it scrolls by on the screen. So if you go to scottreisch.com, there's sign up for the newsletter. It's free. We're not going to sell you anything. We're not going to bombard you anything. We'll give you information as we think it's relevant, and hopefully you'll like it. And like I said, last week, the first 5 people that sign up at scottreisch.com today, we will send you the official Crime Talk mug at no cost. We will ship it to you. And there are people out there that have sent us photos of mugs that they've either purchased or we have sent, and we have sent those to them. Send us a picture with your mug. We'll put it on our mug shot section as well. Let's see here. Michelle M.M. highlighted, will you visit Chris Watson prison? I would love a mug. Well, I would love to go see Chris Watts in prison. I could make that appointment and try to do so, but I can't solicit business directly like that. I think it'd be an amazing interview with him in the sense, like I said, I wouldn't be as an attorney, but more as a kind of as a journalist trying to see what his thoughts were and what's going on. I doubt he'll do that. He has not responded to my open letter or the letter that was sent to him, so I don't think he's going to do that. You know, anyway, we'll just leave it at that. I don't think Mr. Watts will be taking my visit. I'd be more than happy to fly up there. I could put him on the visitors list if his family would like to talk with me. You know, I regret at the time, but at one point when the case was ongoing, but I have, you know, there's ethical issues where I can't just go up and see somebody that's represented. He obviously doesn't have an attorney right now, but we could have, you know, at the time, but the reality is, you know, financially things weren't going to happen that way. So let's see here. Any other questions? Let's see here. Let's come rolling by. Slow to use the DP. I'm sorry about. All right, Polly, you signed up for the website at scottreisch.com. I appreciate that. Like I said, it's free, not going to cost you anything, and you can, you know, stop at any time. We're not going to bombard you with all kinds of stuff. It's just information that we get in. We follow lots of cases and lots of news stories, and we try to, you know, keep it up so we can try to bring you the best information as well, but not all of it can make it onto the show every day. So we'll send that stuff to you as well. Let's see here. Tim Jones Jr., defense attorney, any thoughts? You know, I'm not going to say that I've watched the entire trial of the Tim Jones matter, but I've watched a good chunk of it. And, you know, their defense attorneys, they had a tough case. The guy admitted to, you know, killing his 5 children. As a defense attorney, you know, you've challenged it. You've made the legal arguments to try and suppress any statements. The statements are coming in. It was not a case of a whodunit. It was simply a case that the attorneys had to go try, and their only goal, I'm sure, well, obviously they would love to win, but it wasn't going to happen, was they're trying to save their client from the death penalty. That's it. They will consider that a win. I think they've had a very tough job. I don't think the jury is necessarily going to go in Mr. Jones's favor when it comes to the death, you know, not giving him the death penalty. I think they promptly will. It's just too heinous of a crime. It was just too cold, calculated. His story didn't make sense. Maybe he has mental health issues. I don't know. But, you know, that's the beautiful thing about it. It was presented to a jury. 12 citizens were going to decide whether it was believable or not. It was subject to cross-examination. And obviously the jury rejected that. So I think his attorneys actually did a pretty good job considering how little they had to work with. You know, they gave it a run. Not every case for the defense is going to be a winner. Sometimes you have to go in there and you just take your lumps and you make sure that your client's rights are protected. So let's see here. Let's go to the next one. See if I can see another question. He doesn't seem to, referring to Tim Jones, he doesn't seem to be mentally ill. You know, what does a mentally ill person look like? You can't always tell what that means. My biggest indicator was if somebody, I always have clients that, I'm crazy, send me to Pueblo. That's where the state hospital is to be evaluated. My experience is the truly clients that are mentally ill, that are incompetent, not able to proceed, are the ones that don't want to go to Pueblo. You're like, hey, I think you're not right. I don't think you understand what's going on here, etc. And, you know, they never want to go. It's the ones that are faking it, that are malingering, are the ones that are like, the voices are talking to me in the head. Send me to be evaluated. Those always come back as they're competent or malingering. And but you never know. Sometimes you have to look into that because obviously you don't want a client that is mentally ill or suffers from defect or disease and not understand or appreciate the circumstances of what's going on. So it's you just have to do it. Let's take a look here. Kyle, is there any particular trend as it relates to questions that are rolling by here while I'm talking? I can't always see those.
Yeah, a lot of the Timothy Jones stuff, which is good. We had one question.
Here.
Said, how do I expunge a non-violent felony off my record? Is that possible? Oh, and a $10 super chat from Michelle.
Okay, well, we'll see what. It is hard being in court, realize you're defending is very guilty and unspeakable crimes. Is it hard being in court, realizing you are defending guilty or people of unspeakable crimes? Thank you, Michelle MM, and for the super chat. But it does get highlighted so much brighter on there. So, I've talked about this before, and I get this question all the time. I used to get this all the time from my mother-in-laws. How can you represent those people? Okay. Well, most of the time, the people that we represent are usually pretty good people that have made a mistake, okay? Or their emotions have completely got the best of them. Now, I will tell you this. I have represented true evil, okay? These people were evil, completely had no heart, no conscience, would literally slit your throat for a cup of ramen noodles. Those are the type of people that, as a defense attorney, you protect their rights, okay? And what most people don't think about is all of these cases that you hear about, most of the time what you think is going to happen, happens. It takes place. The outcome that you think will take place, it happens. And the reason why that is that's why the case is built. A prosecutor has an ethical obligation to make sure they can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt if they're going to go forward with it. If they don't think they can do that, they have to dismiss the case. That's what their ethical obligations are. But representing people, like I said, I've represented true evil, and I've represented good people that are just complete knuckleheads and had a bad night. And most of the people that we represent are good people. Most of the people that we represent have a story, okay? There's something usually going on in their life that one day you have no criminal history, and next thing you find yourself in the criminal justice system. How did you get here? Why? What's going on? Usually there's something behind it. It's not just one day, hey, I think I'm going to go rob a store, or I'm going to go get involved in a domestic violence situation with my spouse today. There's usually something deeper going on. A lot of times there's mental health issues, there's drug issues, self-medication through drugs and alcohol. It's all there. It's funny. It doesn't bother me. I'll represent anybody because we're defending the Constitution. Yes, there are people that have done terrible things, and sometimes those are the conversations you have with the clients where, like, man, what do you want me to do here? Okay, there's bad cases. There's cases with bad facts, but everyone is entitled to have a defense. Everybody is entitled to, a guarantee to effective, competent counsel under the Constitution. Right? You're entitled to a fair trial, and that is, really what it boils down to. And if anyone was in that, or their relative was standing there and had done something heinous and terrible, you'd want them to be protected as well. And maybe not get off on a case, but make sure that the punishment was as low as possible. Maybe something that is going to allow them to get on with their life. Just because you have been accused of something that's not, that's wrong, and not something people would condone, but what it really comes down to is that they will, they had a bad day sometimes, bad night. Now they're true career criminals, that's what they do, that's their lifestyle. Yes, that's absolutely the case, but most people are not that way. I saw another highlighted question that went by, the Patrick Frazee matter. The Patrick Frazee matter, they appeared in court for an arraignment. Not guilty plea was entered, and the matter's now set for motions and trial. The defense should be filing their motions rather, I'd say within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll see what challenges the defense is going to make. From what we know, Frazee did not make any statements, okay? So a motion to suppress is only filed when the defense is alleging that the statements made by the defendant to the police were obtained illegally in violation of one's constitutional rights, okay? So I don't expect a whole lot of issues as it relates to statements, because as far as we know, there are none. What is going to come down to, I think, is going to be mostly issues regarding discovery, investigation, credibility. Obviously, the Idaho nurse, anything that she has, I mean, she's got a pretty sweet deal on that particular matter, and I think the defense is going to point the finger at her in that particular matter. I think based upon what I know, that is what I would do. There's no confession. There's no body of Kelsey Barrett that's been recovered to date. And, Nurse Lee, she's the one that said she was going to go kill her 3 times. And then she chickened out on the 4th and ultimately came back to clean it up. What is one of the simpler ways to get somebody else in trouble is you simply keep all the facts the same and you just change the names. This is what went down. Wow, they have some great information as it relates to there. It was almost like they were there. Amazing. But then they say they weren't. They were just there afterwards. So that's going to be real interesting. Some cases have lots of motions issues, and motions are legal issues for the court to resolve. It's ironic. I did a interview, and it's on our page, of a gentleman I had represented years and years ago. I'd say probably 10, 12 years ago, and it was a first-degree murder case. And he was acquitted, and he was kind enough to come in, and we did an interview, and he talked about his experience of being charged, the fear, the anxiety of going to court, not knowing what's going on, etc. And, me having to just kind of tell him, be patient. It's going to work out. It's going to be okay. Trust me. And and the reason why I even have a suit or a coat on today is he passed away. Last week he had, cancer that hits rather sudden, and it didn't take long. But he was a good guy, okay? He went on to a successful business and career and, real estate. And, it just shows you that not everyone accused of a crime is necessarily a bad person. But in that particular case, we had almost no legal issues. He was surrendered. He made no statements to the police. It was, just kind of like, hey, you guys say you did it? Let's go to trial. Let's do this. Because we say he didn't. And so that, not every case has a lot of legal issues. The Frazee case, there's going to be some issues probably as it relates to search warrants, the challenging of search warrants. And not to get too much of a tangent here, but search warrants are a big deal. And I'm dealing with this in a case right now. When an officer applies for either an arrest warrant or a search warrant, they have to go to a judge, and they have to lay out the facts. And they have to lay out the facts that they think are good for the prosecution of why they think there's probable cause. But they also have to put in their facts that kind of cut the other way. And more often, I'm seeing in my practice, police officers are not putting in facts that need to be there for the judge to decide whether there's probable cause to obtain a search warrant, a wiretap, anything along those lines. And it brings up an issue as it relates to what they call a Franks issue. So if a police officer or detective has applied for a search warrant, an affidavit, a wiretap, and they leave out information that was very relevant, like, oh, we think somebody else was actually the suspect, we can't say who was on the other phone, that's significant information. That's basically a lie to the judge. So you file a motion to ask for a Franks hearing, and you have to show that there are statements in there that are not true. And so if you take those statements out that are not true, or you plug in relevant information that was withheld and wasn't produced to the judge, would there still be probable cause? And we're dealing with a case right now where it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable the amount of information that was not provided. And it goes to the veracity of the officer providing the affidavits. And so there may be issues related to that in the Frazee case as well. The affidavits are going to be huge. So, but that case is going to get, I don't want to say that it's going to get good, but it's going to get interesting once we know the motions hearing issues, because that's going to frame the legal questions. The judge decides those legal issues. What evidence is coming in? What evidence is coming out? Not going to be permitted by either side. Is there going to be any 404B notice? Any evidence of other crimes or misconduct if there's been any kind of abusive relationship involved there? The prosecution has to present evidence and say, Judge, we think this is relevant and this is why we need to allow this evidence in. But then the court has to decide, okay, I'm going to allow in what they call 404B evidence or not. It's relevant. There's some connection to it. What element does it go to prove or disprove? But then the court still has to do the analysis of, is this more prejudicial than probative? Is it more prejudicial than relevant in the case? And it's going to result in the defendant having an unfair trial. Why is that? Because every defendant, including Mr. Frazee, and I don't know if there's any 404B evidence coming in his particular case, but he has a right to be tried on these charges and these charges alone. Under the rules of evidence, you specifically keep out any prior instances of bad conduct, because just because the guy or woman may have done, crimes in the past doesn't mean that he did this one that he's charged with. And so, that's what, we oftentimes deal with. You have a right to be charged on these charges and these charges alone. The prosecution always wants to bring in what they refer to as propensity evidence and say, well, it's not to show that he's a bad guy. It's to show that he acted in conformity with certain information, that it shows his motive, absence of mistake, pattern of conduct, things like that. But it has to be relevant. So let's see what else we got. Hopefully that answers that question. Trying to get too into the weeds there, but yeah. Let me ask you, do you all like the new set? And this microphone, hopefully it'll be gone by next week. I got something on order, so it's not right here in my face. Let's see here. We got Karen. Let's see. Karen Welch, Steph Thompson. Looks like somebody's down there in Houston. How many states are you licensed to practice law in? I am licensed to practice law here in the state of Colorado. However, I have taken cases in federal court in other jurisdictions. And, for example, I just went to South Carolina to resolve the matter. We just finished a federal case in New Mexico. I've taken cases in Wyoming, South Dakota, District of Columbia, years and years ago. And if, in the federal court, as long as you're licensed and in good standing and you can vouch for you, you're allowed, and you can file for what they call a petition for pro hoc vice, so that you can be admitted. And usually you have to have a local attorney as local counsel as well, which is fine. And frankly, it works out well because they know the local courts there. But it's always fun to kind of get out of the local area, so to speak, and go do cases somewhere else. It's always interesting, just to see how things practice. I think we put up on the page when I was in South Carolina, the courtroom down there. It was absolutely spectacular. It's a federal courthouse. Just looked really super impressive, and everybody's so nice down there. I do love the thank you going down the rabbit hole. Appreciate that super chat there. That's great. Let's see here. Next question. Yes, love the set, and I see the magic 8 ball nicely displayed. Yes, the magic 8 ball. All right. It's funny. Some people think it's funny. I think it's funny. It's the magic 8 ball. All right. Everybody's seen a magic 8 ball as a kid, right? I had an associate years and years ago, and she's now a judge that worked for me. And she had it in her office years ago. And we always joke that, if there was a tough decision to be made, should we use the magic 8 ball? And anyway, she left to start her own practice years ago. But her parting gift to me was to give me the magic 8 ball. So we still have the magic 8 ball, and it still has fluid in it. And let's see here. Let's ask a question. Will Tim Jones receive the death penalty or life without parole? The answer that comes up is my sources say no. So I don't know what. I guess it all depends on how you answer it. But I always like the magic 8 ball, and it's good conversation starter there. But I've been accused of having some sort of black magic or worshiping the devil because I have the magic 8 ball. Absolutely nothing true about that. It's a kid's magic 8 ball, and it was a gift from someone who I consider to be a friend. Hired her right out of law school. She's gone on to do great things and is now a judge. So that's the story of the magic 8 ball. Let's see. Do you ever handle cases in other countries? No, but I would. That'd be fun. I did know an attorney that did a case in the International War Tribunal in The Hague, and he actually moved there to go do like a 3-year trial. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in trial for 3 years. It's just, I think you just gotta be making it up as you went along. It's really, really weird. Yeah, I felt like your magic 8 ball is broken. Yeah, I think some of the water or whatever's inside is going against it. No law against the photos in Wisconsin. That refers to Watts having pictures of his family there. I don't know what they're doing in Wisconsin. That's fine. Hey, people have to live. But I've never been to a prison where people get to keep pictures of their victims in there, regardless of the fact that it was your wife and your children, that you somehow get to keep them. I had a client once who went to prison. He had killed his wife, and he asked to have pictures from the discovery that were sent, that were there so that he could have them in his thing. And I couldn't do it. I just thought it was just a little weird. Like, you want pictures of your kids, he didn't kill. Yeah, have that. But it just really weird. Like, so I was like, why don't you have somebody else send you those if you need to do that? I just think it's a little creepy, but I don't know. Let Wisconsin do what they think they need to do or not do, I guess. All right. Let's see here. Question. Hey there, Juror 13. That's weird, but then so is Chris Watts. Yeah, I think I just think it's not right at all. Let's see here. What makes you turn down a case? Well, I've never had a case where somebody's come in and said, hey, I've been accused of this, or I've been a family member, or the courts asked me to take a case and said, oh, that's just so heinous. I can't do that. I've never had that. Normally, if somebody comes in and the case is bad, so to speak, in the sense of, multiple homicides, sexual assaults on children, those types of things, those cases are complicated. They're time consuming. Usually it's financially where people just can't do it. You try to work with people. You try to make sure that they get it, good representations. But, here in Colorado, if somebody can't afford to hire private counsel, is our public defender system in the state of Colorado is one of the best in the country. And these people, if they have to go with the public defender, will receive excellent representation. Oftentimes, I receive calls from potential clients, and they want to say, "Oh, I don't like my public defender. He's a public pretender. He just wants to plead me out." And I ask, who it is. Usually I know them, or they tell me the facts. I'm like, sounds like they're giving you good advice. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's not good advice. And, that's it. The other thing that makes me would potentially turn down a case is sometimes refer to as my spidey senses start to tingle, okay? If this person is going to be so unreasonable, so, I wouldn't say high maintenance, but I have clients all the time that hire me and then completely ignore my advice. I'm not sure why they do that, which is fine because I'm getting paid, but it doesn't make sense. And then they look at me and say, "Wow, I guess I should have followed your advice," when whatever they didn't do or they did opposite of what I recommended turns out to be negative. And, I tell this to my clients all the time. And I think this goes for most attorneys, I hope all attorneys, was if I'm giving you advice, I'm trying to give you the best advice that I can based upon the facts that I know, okay? It's kind of like my children. I would tell my children growing up, I know you don't like what I'm telling you. I know that's not what you want to do, but I think this is what the advice should be. And I would tell my kids, and I think they finally got it, by the time they got to college, they figured out, hey, maybe dad isn't lying to me. I would give you the best advice I possibly could, just like my children. Why would I give you bad advice? People just don't like it because they want to do what they want to do. Okay, and they want the attorney to say, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. But if they say it's not a great idea, they don't like it. They're going to ignore it. Or the attorney says, good idea, but let's go about it a different way. Sometimes they don't like it. They want it now, and sometimes it doesn't happen right now. It takes time. That's why these cases are spread out. Everything doesn't happen within a day or two. It takes time. It takes resources to get those done. Let's see here. Why does it seem PDs only make deals with the DAs? Why does it seem PDs only make deals with the DAs? Who else would they make deals with? The DAs are the ones prosecuting the case. The public defender goes to, or the district attorney has extended an offer to the public defender. Who else would they make a deal with? The PDs don't make clients plead guilty. When somebody goes in to take a plea, the court says, you understand you have a right to go to trial. You don't have to follow your attorney's advice. So, public defenders get a bad rap. Now, are there public defenders throughout the nation that are not good? Yes. But are there attorneys around the nation that are not good, that are in private practice? Absolutely. Are there public defenders that are absolutely overworked and don't have the time or the resources to do that? Yes. And there's a lot of stuff going on out there right now as far as lawsuits, as far as against the state for not providing the resources to properly defend someone accused of a crime. If that was you or your loved one in there, wouldn't you like them to have an attorney that doesn't have 200 cases and is literally triaging or working on the fly and trying to, move the cases along? Absolutely. So PDs do want to, let's see here. My mom, if I'm wrong, get in trouble, call me. I won't bail you out. Yeah, that's Joanne Bailey. My mom always said, you know what's right from wrong. You get in trouble, don't call me. I won't bail you out. I've had lots of parents say they wouldn't do that, and they do. Usually it's quite the opposite. Normally, I have to tell people, if you want to help your son or daughter, don't, okay? Don't bail them out. Because you're enabling them. They have to fail. They have to sometimes, learn that there's consequences to something. But that's a bigger issue for a different day, for sure. Let's see. A question going back to Tim Jones, Gator Girl. Please talk about Tim Jones, who killed his 5 children. He confessed. We talked about this earlier when we went live. It was a tough case. He confessed. There were motions issues. His statements were coming in. It's a mitigation case. It's a case where you're not saying he didn't do it. It's trying to say he was not guilty by insanity. They did their best shot. They had him evaluated. It didn't work. That's really about the only thing that they could have done, other than say maybe somebody else did it, but he confessed to it. And those statements are coming in. And so unless there was something that relates to a false confession, which clearly is not the case, and those issues were litigated. So his attorneys did a good job, and I'm not sure how else they would have gone about it from what I know. They tried not guilty by reason of insanity. The goal was to save the client from getting the death penalty. It wasn't like the guy was going to not spend the rest of his life in prison or in the state hospital. So they did what they could do. It's a heinous crime. I mean, it's, killing 5 children. One, he said, I think the first one was that his son broke an electrical outlet and he lost it. And then he decided, oh, I'm going to kill the rest of them. And then he said the voices, the voice thing, I don't get. I've never seen the voices made me do it, the kind of stuff, ever truly work. And have had clients that have been schizophrenic. We'll see. Pamela Long, do you think they will find Jennifer Dulos? And for those who aren't familiar, Jennifer Dulos is the mother of 5 in Connecticut. And I think I'm going to pronounce this correctly because I mispronounced it in my first video. New Canaan. I think there's 2 people that know where Jennifer Dulos is. One of them's in custody, and possibly the other one is out on bond and talking to police as of this past week. I'm not sure that I think that they need to check various construction sites. The woods out there on the East Coast, obviously, they're very thick. He had some lead time, even if it's only a couple of hours until the friends of Ms. Dulos brought it to the attention that she was missing. I'm not sure. I guess my question is, or the answer is, I don't know. I hope they do. In a perfect world, she would be fine. She's just locked up somewhere, maybe being held hostage. In a realistic world, if she is in fact deceased, it'd be nice for her family to have her remains for a proper burial. And, this is the kind of thing we talk about the other day with the death penalty. If the prosecutor rolls in there and says, hey, we're going to go death, unless you tell us where the body is, we'll go life without, life without parole. That's it. And I think Connecticut is one of the states that doesn't have the death penalty. I'd have to double check that, but I think they got rid of it. And so, what do? The guy's like, prove it. Whether I confess and tell you how it all went down, I'm gonna get life without parole, or I didn't do it. Prove it. Worst I get is life without parole. So, it's not the kind of case where necessarily they would go death anyway. But like I said, it's a bargaining tool, and I've seen it work. I've seen it in cases where I've had where there's been a missing child or body, and it's, hey, if you tell us where the body is, we won't go death. And in that particular case, the co-defendant helped them identify where the body of the small child was. So yeah, it happens. Scott, right?
Don't know about that, Malia Davis.
Okay. Let me go this way. Scott Reisch, have you ever bowed out of a case knowing the defendant was guilty? Ever bowed out? Like I said, I talked about. I've represented lots of people that are guilty. It's about protecting their rights and doing what's right under the Constitution. It's not, as a defense attorney, you're not condoning what your client did. You're simply trying to make sure their rights are protected and make sure the due process is given. Due process. The rules are not technicalities. This comes from the Constitution. It's not a technicality, it's the Constitution. And it's the type of thing, you have to know what the rules of the games are, rules of evidence, procedures, things of that nature, and make sure it's followed. And if they don't follow it, then they need to be, there has to be consequences to it. That's the problem with lots of things these days. The judges don't have any consequences for prosecutors that violate the rules, and it's frustrating. Let's see here. As a defense lawyer, do you ever try to talk a client into telling where the body is, especially if a child, even if your client is not given a deal? That would be completely up to the client. And even if the client told you under those kind of situations, ethically, an attorney could not reveal that information unless he had permission from his client to do so. And I can't imagine a client would do that unless he was going to get some benefit out of that. So even if the attorney knew, you couldn't reveal it, and it'd be a violation of attorney-client privilege, and you could potentially lose your law license. Malia Davis case. For those that aren't familiar with that, Malia Davis is the young woman down in Houston. Stepdad was picking her up. Mom was somehow gone, but then family representative goes and speaks to the boyfriend and tells him where the body can be found, ultimately in Arkansas. I'd have to double check, but I don't think that they were still waiting on autopsy results, looking for the cause and manner of death to see if it can in fact be ruled a homicide or whether it's accidental. I'm assuming it will be, but that's a tragic case. And the fact that the story that the boyfriend made in that particular case, and I forget his name off the top of my head here, it just made no sense. He was kidnapped, carjacked. He tried to say that some Hispanic gentleman did it, but then the car was found later. Come on. It just sounds weird. And those stories fall apart so quickly. They really, really do. And in today's world, what people don't realize is that there's so much video evidence that's available out there. It's just a question of actually being able to go and find it. Look, for example, the Jesse Smollett case. His story didn't make sense. Why? Because they went and got the video from all the cameras around the neighborhood to show that it just didn't make sense. Like, we'd be able to see this, all the cameras and nobody sees somebody going or going. It just depends. There's just so much stuff, and I'll tell you a story about that. I saw one of the highlighted super chats coming across there. It says, will they find out how Malia was killed? I think they will. Most of the time, the doctors are able to determine how somebody has died, unless the state of the body is in such poor condition. This case is now over, but it'll be going up on appeal. I just finished a case. It was in Telluride, Colorado, on the other side of the state. And in that particular case, experts looked at the body, and I'm not telling anybody that this is all came out in the trial, but not a single one of the doctors could determine the cause or manner of death. Okay, and when they're trying to state that, our client was involved in some way, but they can't say how the child died, under what circumstances, what's the manner of death, when it took place. Okay, that's not sufficient evidence. And in our particular case, this is the one we did a 3-week trial in Montrose because we got the change of venue in that particular case. And this is one of those cases that absolutely just, it bugs me because our client should not have been found guilty. I'll just leave it at that. There were some legal issues as it relates to a duty. You have no duty to protect anyone unless you say, I'm going to assume this duty, or you're put in a position of trust. But just being on a 30-acre property is not enough. And if something bad happens, that you are going to be held responsible. And when the evidence shows that your children are there and they're healthy, and somebody else, the mother of those children, can't explain what happened, how they died, that's just wrong. So normally, going back to the question, forensic pathologists, very smart people, will be able to figure out cause and manner of death. In our particular case, the bodies were so badly decomposed, almost mummified, that no one was able to do that. And what really frustrated me about that in particular case is the court allowed in, for lack of a better term, junk science, stuff that had been rejected in every jurisdiction it was tried to be brought into, and was determined it was not reliable enough. But it was in our particular case. And since that has come out, we've received thousands of pages of discovery further showing it, but courts don't like to change their mind because it makes it look like they got it wrong. So unfortunately, client has to, go to prison and have the appellate process work it out, rather than people stepping up and saying, doing the wrong thing. All right, let's see here. Sorry about that. That case just gets me fired up. Maybe we'll do that show one day. Duty. You have no duty to anyone unless it's imposed by a statute, unless it's your child. You're a caregiver for a particular person. There was a case here in Colorado where a guy was on a scavenger hunt with several people. He went down to go look into the river, ultimately gets swept away in the river, and they find his body, couple weeks later. The parents of the individual wanted everyone that was involved in that scavenger hunt to be reported because they knew that he had been swept away, and they didn't report that he was gone. I don't think anyone even called the police when they knew he didn't return. And so the parents were outraged, and they wanted him charged. And the sheriff's like, there's no duty, okay? I would like to think that if I had a heart attack sitting right here, that Kyle would come from around the other side of the board and maybe call 911, maybe even give me CPR. But guess what? He doesn't have to. He could be like, Scott, this is great. I'm rolling. This is great. That's it. There's no duty for him to do that. And in that particular case, the parents of that young man, and I feel sorry for them, I couldn't imagine losing a child, actually went and tried to have the legislature say there's this duty. And the legislature, and the Colorado legislature, is not the smartest group of people ever assembled, but even they got it, that said, you can't impose this duty. Think about it. If there was a duty to help everybody who looked like they were in a bad situation, the highways would come to a standstill. If there's an accident, we got to pull over. Everyone has to call 911. The system would be overloaded. Well, what about the guy that said, well, it looks like everybody's doing okay, and you drove by? It's just a mess. And so in our particular case, we argued there was no duty, and the judge basically ignored hundreds of years of legal jurisprudence, because why? It's a small town. It's a really bad case. There's 2 dead children. Somebody has to go to jail. And so that's, those are the legal arguments that as attorneys we make, because that's the law. And the fact that it's a tragedy, the fact that there's deceased children, doesn't mean that somebody has to be held accountable. The appropriate person should be held accountable, like the mother, not the guy living on the same property in his separate cars, who was not a caregiver to these children. So that case gets me fired up. That will be appealed. I assure you of that. Anyway, let's see. Let's go back to the next question. Do we have any next questions? Yeah, so, there's, let's see here, going back to Aloha Whitney, your job, hold up the Constitution. Okay, good question, Clint. Thank you for highlighting that super chat there. See, it's so much easier to read those when they come up nice and bold. Not asking for money, but it is nice if you want to get your question highlighted, it makes it a lot easier. Our job is obviously to defend our client and protect the Constitution. What's the prosecution's job? This is like a softball question. Well, the prosecutor's job is to do justice, right? That's what they are hired to do. That's their legal and ethical obligation, to do justice. It's not about getting convictions. If they don't think they can prove the case, ethically they have to just dump it. If they don't think that they have the right person, they should dump it. If it's an illegal stop, they should dump it, okay, and say it was an illegal stop. Not going to let this happen. And for the most part, most prosecutors are really ethical, okay? You hear about cases oftentimes where evidence is withheld. They knew about the information. Usually it's withholding information. That's the biggest no-no a prosecutor can do. Your job is to give it all to the defense. And I remember when I was a young prosecutor, my boss would say, if we're prosecuting this individual, you give the defense whatever they want, and we're still going to convict him if we thought we were right. And if it turned out in that information that maybe the guy wasn't as culpable, or maybe it was the wrong person, then that was our duty to dump the case or to make a better offer for a reduced charge, okay? I've joked about this, and sometimes prosecutors, and I had dinner with several prosecutors last night. You know, it's funny. We probably all agree on more than what most people would probably think. But joke with them. My job on a daily basis is to defend the Constitution. Prosecutors look at it some days, some of them, like, how do I get around the Constitution, right? The Constitution the Bill of Rights is a limitation on government's authority, right? It says you can't search people's property. It has to be reasonable. You have a right to be secure in your places and things. Pretty straightforward, plain language, right? It's changed over time. In fact, Supreme Court said, hey, instead of that being your case or your lockbox in your house, that lockbox now is carried over to your cell phone. If the police want to get into your cell phone, they have to get a warrant, okay? So, but if you think about it, as a defense attorney, my job is to say, you can't do that. You're violating the Constitution. Prosecutor looks at it and says, well, it's reasonable. How can I show that this search is reasonable? How can I show that this is fine? If I pull you over and I'm on the side of the road for 5 hours, somehow that's reasonable while we wait for a drug dog to come do a search. No, that's unreasonable. You're not free to leave. That's an unreasonable seizure, okay? So those are the type of things. Prosecutor's job is to do justice, and most of them do the right thing. Some of them have a twisted sense of justice. They think the guy or woman is guilty, and they don't care what it costs to get them. And I've like I said, I've joked. My job is to defend the Constitution, and people's job in the government is to get up and to try and subvert it. When has anybody in the government got up and said, you know what, we just can't do that? That's against the Constitution. No, they try to come up with new ways to get around it. Why? Because people in power want to keep that power. They want to be able to do what they think they can do. And if you put limits on them, as the Constitution did, they don't like it. So they're always trying to get around it. It's similar to a small kid. You put them somewhere and you say, you can't get out. And they're going to figure out a way to get around that little gate. Okay. Let's see here. Question. Let's see here. I can't understand that. Nicole. Let me see if I can make that a little bigger. It says, okay, here's an interesting one. This one always gets people fired up. Let's talk about Nicole Kessinger. Question. Golfer gal, why was Nicole Kessinger not polygraphed? Well, she could be asked to take a polygraph, but she can refuse. Okay? I have mixed feelings about polygraphs. All right? I have had clients that I thought were innocent based upon other things. but could not pass a polygraph to save my life or to save their life. Okay. I've had other clients who have told me they did it and that can pass a polygraph no sweat. Okay. I've seen people that go online. How can I manipulate a polygraph? A good polygrapher can tell you if somebody is trying to manipulate a polygraph. It's basically a tool of interrogation. That's all it is. Okay. There was a case, it went to the Supreme Court, and I can't remember it, but years ago, I remember reading it in law school, where it was talking about basically, can the police lie to a defendant, that they shouldn't be allowed to lie? And it was, back in the 70s, I think copy machines were just coming about, and the police would be, ask the suspect a question, and then they would hit the button, and it would come out either, untruthful or not truthful. And the guy basically was, oh my gosh, you got me. Well, the issue was that can they lie? Supreme Court said, yes, you can lie to the defendant to get, kind of to the information. You can't get so outrageous, but you can lie to them, say, oh, we know what's going on. We've got the guy in the next room. We've got you. And so in that particular case, the Supreme Court said was it. But that copier machine that was spitting out truthful, not truthful responses, so to speak, was a tool of interrogation. It was trying to say, look, we've got you. We know that you're not being truthful. Why don't you tell us what went on and, go easy on you? So you can do that. The same thing with a polygraph, okay? That's all it is. It's to get people talking. A police officer interrogating a suspect on a particular case, just talk to me, okay? Because eventually we're going to get around to the subject matter at hand, and they're going to work something in. You saw that in the Chris Watts interviews and the interrogation. It's that whole, let's make you feel comfortable. Can I get you something to drink? Can I, tell me about your story? And next thing you know, it's, well, maybe if you didn't, kill, Shanann or the children, why don't you tell me what happened? Okay, in that particular case, I think it was completely fabricated. It was like, oh yeah, I killed because she killed the children, blah, blah, blah. But the point is a good investigator just wants you to talk, okay? In today's world, everything is videotaped. I spend half my day and half my attorneys spend half their time watching videos and body cams these days. It just goes on and on and on. But for the most part, the detectives, investigators just want to talk to the defendant. Nothing slows a case down more than a suspect or witnesses who are unwilling to speak with the defense to the police. And even when the defendant thinks, oh, I'm just in there trying to figure out what's going on, he may not know what they know and talk himself into a confession. And that's all they want, just talk. I haven't watched it yet, but there's the new Netflix series. I think it's a 3-part documentary about the New York Central Park jogger case, where 5 young black men who were completely exonerated, but after going to prison, after falsely confessing, and what was that? They were talking to the police. Police like, oh, we know you did it. Just come clean. Just tell us. I think the one kid, the little preview I saw, yes, when they see us, that's the name of it. I saw an interview of one of the gentlemen, and he even asked his dad, just tell them what they want to hear, just so we can get through this and start working. Yeah, no, but that's all they want. They want you to start talking, and next thing you know, you could be confessing to things, to being on the grassy knoll in Dallas in '63. Okay, you get tired enough, exhausted enough, I hate to say it, at a certain point, and the courts have said at a certain point, it's not just interrogation. At that point, it becomes almost torture. If you're depriving somebody of sleep, food, water. Why do you think in interviews these days, can I get you a soda? Can I get you some water? Are you good? Trying to make, they never tell them if you're just a suspect, you can get up and walk out and leave right now. I mean, they sometimes try to do that depending on the Miranda form, but it's pretty intimidating just to get up and walk out of the room in the police department and think you're just going to walk out the front door. So they get people there, they start talking. That's the biggest thing. So polygraphs, do I trust them? No, I think it's a tool of interrogation. That's it. So long roundabout way there. So I guess kind of reset here. Wow, it's already been an hour. Jeez. All right. So obviously this is, crime talk, and, we're here live today. I don't even see how many people are tuning in here. 466. All right. I guess there's 466 people watching. That's great. And, just trying to see what people are doing. Obviously appreciate everybody tuning in, watching the channel. Please like, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, subscribe. I'd like to see those subscriber numbers pop up. We were rocking and rolling, and it kind of just got a little stagnant there. But I think that's more of a YouTube thing on their algorithms that they did, is what I've been told. So we'll go just a little bit longer here, and then we'll wrap it up. So if you have a question, now would be a good time to do it. I'm not saying you have to, but those little super chat things are kind of nice because it really highlights. Let's see here. Chris Ross was allowed to go home after day one. Yes, he was in that interview. Why? Because he denied doing anything wrong. But once he admitted and confessing to killing his wife, guess what? He was arrested. Okay? But it was a voluntary encounter. Okay? And let me tell you about this. I get this question a couple times a week. I was arrested. The cop did this, and I wasn't Mirandized. When do you have to be advised of your Miranda rights? Okay? Two things have to take place before the police can have to advise you of your Miranda rights. Okay? Let's just keep this clear. You have to be under arrest. Okay? Under arrest doesn't necessarily mean that you are in shackles, but it makes it a lot easier to determine. Okay? You can even be in shackles and technically not under arrest for the sense of you're placed in handcuffs for officer safety reasons while they investigate. That's a little tangent you have to go down. But you have to be under arrest, and they have to be asking you questions about what they're investigating. Okay? Basically saying you're a suspect, you're under arrest. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Okay? Now, obviously, your Miranda advisements come from a case that the Supreme Court challenged as saying that this individual wasn't advised. It was Miranda v. Arizona. And about 5, maybe 6, probably maybe longer than that, there was a case going up to the Supreme Court that said, where does it say police have to advise people of the Miranda rights? It's judge-made law. Don't have to do it. And what was interesting was the Supreme Court said, oh, no, we're not going to be the ones to take away somebody's rights, somebody's protection. Like, what is always shocking to me is that how many people are advised of their Miranda rights and still talk to the police. It just blows my mind. I have clients all the time. Yeah, I didn't say anything to the police. And then I get their video interview that goes for an hour in length. Well, I was just trying to figure out what's going on, but I didn't say anything. So it amazes me. Okay. Because usually if the police have enough to arrest you, and they would, and if they want to interview you, usually means they're not sure you did it, or they don't have enough to arrest you, and they want to talk with you, and hopefully you confess. And I've had police officers and detectives tell me that. We wouldn't have a case, but your client talked to us. We didn't think he was actually going to talk to us. It was before he hired me, because I would never let my clients talk to them. So, let's see here. A couple more questions, and then, like I said, we'll try to wrap it up. Do you still plan on interviewing Ted Bundy's lawyer? Yes. I've spoken with Chuck, and it's just been a scheduling thing. He actually had a lot of interviews that he was doing. regarding the case, and he didn't think any. He goes, I'm not sure anybody would be really interested in that. And I'm like, yes, people would be interested in hearing from Ted Bundy's lawyer, the one that represented him in Aspen, Colorado, where he escaped and went on a then the local posse ultimately captured him. I think after a week. I told him that'd be very interesting, and it would be. You and everyone die. It's quite disturbing. Let's see here. Let's see if there's anybody else here. There's a couple of people going on. Let's see here. What is the status of selling the Watts home? The Watts home, I had my assistant check a couple weeks ago. It's still just kind of held in abeyance. I think the bank is just waiting, but there, as I stated in the last video, actually, I don't know if I did that one, but there's a civil case going on. There's a wrongful death case by Shanann's family against Chris Watts. Watts didn't file an answer in that particular case, so a default judgment was entered. And the attorney that was from North Carolina withdrew, but the family still has local counsel. And so they're trying to ask for the hold on, Brenda Yeomans will come back to that. They're trying to determine the dollar amount to see if there's any value in the estate so they can get that. But that's taken time because he hasn't responded, and the court still issued delay management orders and things like that. So I would expect once the civil case is resolved, the house will be sold once they know what interest they'll be able to give it. Let's see here. Brenda, can you discuss emotions in court and causes for mistrial? Emotions in court, it depends on the case. Sometimes, there's a lot of emotions in the case. I was in a court case Friday. We reached a disposition. The family had hired an attorney and objected to the deal, saying that it was too generous. So a lot of emotions in that case on both sides all around. Causes for mistrial. Causes for mistrial usually occur when it is discovered that the prosecution has failed to turn something over, usually mid-trial, or two, somebody says something that is not legally permissible. You may ask as a follow-up, Scott, what are most of the causes for mistrials that you've had? Let me tell you. It's usually not the defense, okay? As attorneys, prosecutors, they know what people can say and they can't say. If evidence has been excluded and somebody brings it up, let's say a statement was suppressed, judge says you can't use it. If the prosecution witness brings it up, mistrial, okay? Commenting, and usually the most of the mistrials that I've ever had in my career have been from police officers. They get up on the stand and they just can't help themselves. They want to just get that one little dig in, okay? Whether it's against the defendant, the family, who knows? Maybe me, I don't know. But they want to say something like, "Oh, well, yeah," and he refused to talk with us. Well, you can never testify as to a defendant's silence that he refused to speak. Mistrial. You can't say he's been convicted of other crimes in the past. You can't bring up anything about one's character. Anything that is so prejudicial can result in a mistrial. And then once a mistrial is declared, the question is, was it so egregious that we just have to start over, or so egregious and outrageous that the court's going to dismiss the case and say, we're done, you had your shot? Normally, it's simply you have to go back and do it all over again. I had a mistrial once. It was a homicide case, and the video stuff wasn't as sophisticated as it is today, but there was a video interview. They played it, and the question that came out was, tell me about other homicides, blank has been involved with. And the DA, he's a good guy. There was no malicious intent, but there wasn't the editing that they do today where they would have just played that portion of it. But he couldn't get the machine to stop playing in time, but the jury heard it. So I have to object. And, they're like talking about other homicides that this individual may have been involved in. Well, the jury can't hear that. That makes him think, oh, he's a bad person, right? Propensity evidence. Mistrial declared. That was frustrating because in that particular case, we were winning, but I had to ask for that, and the judge granted it. What was frustrating was that was the first homicide trial I ever lost, and it was on retrial. And we were winning the first time through. So hopefully that explains emotions and mistrials, because, yes, there were a lot of emotions in that particular case as well. See, yeah, exactly. Oh, my God, awesome. Ted Bundy. When I get off the phone, I will follow up with Chuck and see if we can get something done here in the next couple of weeks. All right, I think we're good. Any other questions? Anybody? It's your chance. You got 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, no other questions scrolling by. Thanks for watching. Please like the channel. Please subscribe. Hit that little bell so you can get notifications of when we go live or when we put up new content. As always, leave a comment. Tell us what cases you would like us to talk about. If you have any insight, it was very interesting. I received emails from people that lived in Connecticut, and before it was even news, saying the paramour in the Dulos case was being interviewed by police. So it's nice having our own little set of private investigators out there, and hopefully we can share it with the rest of the world as well. And it's even better if we get it first. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you tuning in here today. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll do it again soon. Thanks.